The battlefields of World War II were a testing ground for some of the most iconic and formidable tanks in military history. Among these, the German Tiger and Panther tanks were renowned for their thick armor and devastating firepower. In 1942, the introduction of the Tiger I tank sent shockwaves through the Allied forces, spurring a desperate need to counter its formidable armor. The British Army quickly recognized the urgency of developing new, radical vehicles to stand a chance against these German behemoths. The completely redesigned Cruiser Mark 8 Challenger, A-30, and Cruiser Mark 8 Cromwell, A-27M, were promising contenders, but they faced delays and significant challenges. This realization prompted the British government to consider a more pragmatic approach, modifying an existing tank to meet the demands of the battlefield. The result was the Sherman Firefly, a modified version of the American Sherman tank, armed with a powerful 17-pounder gun and capable of engaging German armor from a safer distance of over 900 meters. This tank was not just another armored vehicle. It was a game-changer that significantly boosted the morale of Allied tankers. But how effective was the Sherman Firefly against the might of German heavy tanks? Join us as we explore the development, strategies, and battlefield encounters that made the Sherman Firefly a legend in its own right. The standard Sherman 75mm M3 gun, and even the upgraded 76mm gun, often struggled against the formidable German Big Cats. This prompted the need for a more powerful gun to give the Sherman the edge it required. To achieve this, the Ordnance quick-firing 17-pounder, a 76.2mm anti-tank gun, was selected. This wasn't just any gun. It was the most powerful British gun of World War II and is often considered one of the most powerful guns of the entire war. The 17-pounder was a game-changer, capable of penetrating more armor than even the infamous German 88mm KWK-36 mounted on the Tiger tanks, or the 75mm KWK used on other German models. The 17-pounder also utilized a new type of ammunition, armor-piercing discarding sabot, or APDS. This innovative round, theoretically, could penetrate any piece of German armor on the battlefield at any likely combat range. Originally conceived as a stopgap until new British tank designs were ready, the Sherman Firefly became the most common armored vehicle to mount the powerful 17-pounder gun during the war. This formidable tank could take on the German Panthers and Tigers, boasting the best tank gun the Allies had, until the US introduced the 90mm M26 Pershing in early 1945. The new 17-pounder gun was too large for the standard Sherman turret, necessitating several modifications. Firstly, the radio system, originally housed at the back of the turret, had to be relocated to an armored box on the outside of the turret. Secondly, the gun's breech block had to be rotated 90 degrees and mounted sideways, a significant departure from its usual installation. This change meant the gun could be loaded from the left instead of the top, allowing for easier handling of the large 17-pounder rounds. The recoil system had to be shortened and modified to fit the new gun into the Sherman turret, and the gun cradle also required shortening. Additionally, a new barrel and gun mantlet were designed and constructed to properly protect the front of the turret, as the 17-pounder was too large to fit in the standard mantlet. The front hull machine gun was removed, and the gun port was plated over, reducing the crew from 5 to 4. Inside, the turret underwent complete modifications. It was emptied to allow room for the gun's recoil, and a counterweight was added to the rear to balance the long barrel. This counterweight, or bustle, housed the radio that had been relocated from the back of the turret. The radio was accessed through a large hole in the turret casting. The loader's position was adjusted, and a new hatch had to be cut into the top of the turret over the gunner's position, as the size of the new gun prevented the gunner from using the standard hatches. The 17-pounder featured a 1-meter-long recoil course, necessitating a complete overhaul of the recoil system. Main recoil cylinders were shortened, and additional cylinders were introduced to maximize the turret's width. The gun breech was rotated 90 degrees to enable the loader to sit on the left side, and the gun cradle had to be shortened, initially causing some stability issues. These were resolved by adopting a longer, untapered section at the base of the gun barrel. As a result, the Firefly was equipped with a custom-tailored tank gun and turret, specifically designed to accommodate the powerful 17-pounder. The 17-pounder gun was a formidable weapon, providing the Firefly with significant firepower on the battlefield. It finally gave the British a tank and gun capable of penetrating the German big cats at distances over 1,000 meters. While the APDS dramatically increased the gun's penetration capability, it came with trade-offs. The round's accuracy was compromised, and the 50mm penetrator, the component responsible for breaching armor, was less powerful compared to the standard APC-BC shell. The nickname Firefly did not appear in official wartime documents, but was adopted informally due to the bright muzzle flash of the main gun. It was occasionally used in unit-level war diaries starting in March 1944, with another nickname being Mayfly. During the war, Shermans equipped with 17-pounder guns were typically referred to as 1C, 1C hybrid, or VC, depending on the basic mark of the vehicle. In British nomenclature, a C at the end of the Roman numeral indicated a tank equipped with the 17-pounder. Production of the Firefly began in January 1944, and by May 31st, approximately 342 Sherman Fireflies had been delivered to the 21st Army Group for the Normandy landings. Allied tank units were typically composed of 3 75mm Shermans and 1 Firefly. A similar distribution was used in Cromwell units, but this created logistical challenges, as each Cromwell troop required parts for 2 different tank types. The total production of Sherman Fireflies reached around 2,100 to 2,200 tanks, though exact numbers are difficult to pinpoint due to contradictory figures in official documents. Fireflies were introduced to armored brigades and divisions in the 21st Army Group in 1944, right in time for the Normandy landings. This timing proved fortunate, as Allied intelligence, through statistical analysis, had begun to recognize, by early 1944, that the Germans were deploying a much larger number of formidable tanks, such as the Panther, than had been initially anticipated. This information took time to reach Allied military planners, who had mistakenly assumed that the Panther, like the Tiger, would be a rare heavy tank with a limited production run. Consequently, the large number of Panthers deployed came as a surprise to Allied formation commanders and tank crews, who found themselves engaging these formidable tanks with guns that could only penetrate their frontal armor at short range. Kintout, who served as a tank gunner and commander in the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry during the Normandy campaign in 1944, vividly described the impact of mounting a 17-pounder in the Sherman. The Firefly tank is essentially an ordinary Sherman, but to fit the enormous breech of the 17-pounder and store its massive shells, we had to eliminate the co-driver and repurpose his space for storage. The muzzle flash is so intense that both the gunner and commander have to blink at the moment of firing, or risk being blinded for so long that they miss seeing the shot hit the target. The flash produces such a burst of flame that after just a shot or two, it can set the hedge or undergrowth in front of the tank on fire. When moving, the gun's extensive forward and side overlap means that the driver, gunner, and commander must stay constantly vigilant to avoid colliding with seemingly distant trees, unassuming lampposts, or innocuous buildings. Panthers and Tigers made up only 30% of the 2,300 German tanks deployed in Normandy. The majority were Panzer IVs, Stug 3s, and other tanks that the 75mm Shermans could effectively handle. However, due to the strategic importance of Caen and Montgomery's operations, which were designed to pin down German armored forces in front of British positions and allow American units to break out to the west, British and Commonwealth forces faced over 70% of all German armor during the Battle of Normandy, including more than half of the elite Waffen-SS Panzer units. As a result, the Sherman Firefly became one of the most valued tanks among British and Commonwealth commanders. It was the only British tank capable of reliably penetrating the frontal armor of Panthers and Tigers at the standard combat ranges encountered in Normandy. This fact did not go unnoticed by the Germans, who quickly recognized that these long-barrel Shermans posed a significant threat to their heavy tanks, far exceeding the standard Shermans. As a result, German tank crews and anti-tank gun crews were reportedly instructed to prioritize eliminating Fireflies first. Similarly, Firefly crews were aware that the distinctive long barrel of their 17-pounder made their tanks easily identifiable compared to standard Shermans. To reduce the risk of being targeted, crews employed various camouflage tactics. Some painted the front half of the gun barrel white on the bottom and dark green or the original olive drab on the top to create the illusion of a shorter barrel. Another proposed method involved mounting a shorter wooden dummy gun on the rear of the turret, pointing forward, but this tactic does not appear to have been used in combat. Despite being high-priority targets, Fireflies seem to have a statistically lower chance of being knocked out compared to standard Shermans. This was likely due more to their tactical employment rather than the effectiveness of their camouflage. Given the high value placed on Fireflies, a common tactic was for commanders to scout the battlefield before engagements to identify advantageous overwatch positions, allowing the Fireflies to maximize their impact while minimizing exposure. During the battle, Firefly tanks were often stationed in overwatch positions, staying behind to provide cover for the advancing Shermans. They would engage and eliminate any enemy tanks that revealed themselves while firing on the advancing Shermans, only moving forward once the area was secured, or if they could no longer provide effective cover from their current position. Similarly, when on the move, troop commanders typically placed Fireflies in the rear to minimize their risk of being knocked out. However, due to the unpredictable nature of combat, this arrangement wasn't always feasible. As a result, Fireflies frequently had to engage enemies in the open, where their distinctive long barrels made them easy targets. Despite these challenges, the Firefly's increased firepower was highly valued. In many engagements, the Firefly demonstrated its worth by knocking out Tigers and Panthers at long range, as well as less formidable tanks like the Panzer IV and Stug 3. Its ability to engage and defeat such a wide range of German armor made it an indispensable asset on the battlefield. One notable example of the Firefly's increased firepower was demonstrated by Lieutenant G.K. Henry's Firefly during the defense of Normandy on June 9th. The attack was led by the 3rd Company of the 12th SS Panzer Regiment from the 12th SS Panzer Division. Determined to capture the town as a precursor to a larger offensive aimed at driving the British and Canadians back into the sea, Kurt Meyer ordered 12 Panthers from the 3rd Company along with infantry to assault Normandy, and forced the Canadians out. The attack commenced at 1300 hours, with the Panthers charging towards the town at full speed, stopping only to fire their guns. They quickly outpaced their infantry support, which was pinned down by Allied artillery fire. Within 1,000 meters of Normandy, 9 Shermans from the Canadian 1st Hussars began targeting the advancing Panthers' flanks. Lieutenant Henry's gunner, Trooper A. Chapman, expertly waited until the Panthers lined up like ducks in a row, and then swiftly knocked out 5 of them with just 6 rounds. The attack was ultimately repelled, resulting in the loss of 7 out of the 12 Panthers. A similar demonstration of the Firefly's effectiveness occurred on June 14th during Operation Perch. Sergeant Harris of the 7th Dragoon Guards, along with 3 standard Shermans, established defensive positions with infantry after successfully clearing the Germans from the village of Langevras near Tilly-sur-Seulles. Spotting 2 Panthers advancing from the east through his binoculars, Sergeant Harris took aim and fired at a range of 800 meters. With his first shot, he knocked out the lead Panther, and with his second, he took out the second Panther. Relocating to a new position on the other side of the town, Sergeant Harris spotted 3 more Panthers approaching from the west. From his well-concealed flanking position, he and his gunner, Trooper McKillop, managed to eliminate all 3 Panthers with just 3 rounds. Harris and McKillop had knocked out 5 Panthers with as many rounds, showcasing the Firefly's formidable firepower, particularly when firing from a defensive position against advancing enemy tanks. The Fireflies proved highly effective against Tiger tanks during the renowned battle at Villers-Bocage. Tigers 112, commanded by SS Oberscharfer, Heinrich Ernst, and Tiger 121, commanded by SS Untersturmführer, Wilfried Lacasius, were both knocked out by a Firefly from B Squadron of the City of London Yeomanry. Michael Wittmann, the famed German tank commander, after his success during the battle, chose to avoid engaging with the Firefly, opting instead to retreat. His tank was eventually disabled by an anti-tank gun during his withdrawal. However, this was not Wittmann's final encounter with the Fireflies. On August 8, 1944, 10 Tiger tanks from the 101st SS Heavy Tank Battalion were part of a combat group led by SS Obersturmbannführer Hans Waldmüller, which was dispatched to counterattack the advancing British, Canadian, and Polish tanks. A column of 7 Tigers, including Wittmann's Tiger 007, was ambushed near Gomsnil. It is highly likely that a shot from a Firefly was responsible for igniting the fire and ammunition detonation that destroyed Wittmann's Tiger tank and led to his demise. The Sherman Firefly earned a mixed reputation. On one hand, the 17-pounder gun was a powerful anti-tank weapon with exceptional penetration capabilities. On the other hand, the modifications required to install such a gun on the Sherman came at a significant cost. The tank lost some of its best qualities: crew comfort, reliability, and its role as a universal weapon. Nevertheless, the arrival of a tank capable of defeating all known German armor had a profound impact on troop morale. The presence of a Firefly on the battlefield provided something beyond mere specifications: hope. Despite its drawbacks, the Firefly lived up to this hope and made a significant contribution toward the ultimate victory over Germany.